Now do I sound good? Now do I sound?
Yes, I was
Okay.
going to say the volume is good, but a little low. So closer to the mic is good.
And we are live. Good morning, Jack Gashite of the Tree Spirit Project.
Good morning, Dark Skylar of the. I don't know. That's a cool looking hat on you. I'm a little scared, but I'm thinking it's kind of appropriate for our mood today.
I'm just covering the bases. I'm taking the Lunny approach in all of his media. He's got his dad in every local Bay sports team, and flannel and cowboy hat. So you can't question me. I've got my American flag cowboy hat too, if I need to pull it out.
No, this is Kevin Lunny.
What did I say?
You said Lunny. I just want people to give context.
Yeah.
You dig into this, and I just want to give context. So this is Kevin Lunny, one of the ranchers at Point Reyes National Seashore, who also has many other businesses outside of Point Reyes National Seashore, who's been on the Oh Poor Us Poverty Tour along with Albert Strauss and Bill Nyman. No, please don't destroy all of daring in the world by kicking us out of Point Reyes, by giving us millions of dollars as a going away present to leave Point Reyes Seashore.
He's an astonishing narcissist. I can see why he and Trump are such buddies. Like, Lunny, how many times are you going to participate in one of these pity pieces while also writing letters saying, hey, don't stop this from happening? I'm having a good time crying about the thing that I want to happen. And once, twice, but it just keeps going and going and going.
Eating your organic beef, selling it too, and then complaining about it all and wanting more.
And we are mainly going to talk about the Bay Nature magazine write-up that they did today. Well, I don't know if we'll mainly talk about it, but I do want to warm up with one of the latest Lunny pieces. But I will get to that in a moment. You, I believe, wanted to share something?
Yeah, thanks, Skylar. I just let the audience know there's actually some preparation involved in the show, and Skylar's been doing I was the lion's share, which means all of it, and especially this weekend, I've just been consumed with stuff, preparing for a demonstration. And Skylar and I do this live. We didn't actually talk about this in advance, so it can be fresh and bold for our audience. But on Saturday, there was a Fairfax Festival. Thousands of people pile into this little town of 5,000, population 5,000 people in Marin. And for the first time, Chainsaw Man, aka Chainsaw Ranger, made his appearance to inform the public, to educate and gather their attention to a management plan, restoration plan, forest resilience plan, bullshit, all of it. Chainsaws, masticating machines, herbicides in a beautiful forest. And I wouldn't be working on just this issue for for Tomales Bay State Park if it weren't also the theme we're going to touch on today in Bay Denatured magazine, which is man managing nature. We screw it up with all our cattle ranching and cattle grazing and then we fix it by doing more management. It's always hands-on. It's never nature left on its own, because nature can't survive without human stewardship.
It's actually a very confusing article, like the number of times it contradicts itself. I wonder if the people at Bay Nature magazine have any idea what they're talking about, or if the primary goal was just to get out another pity piece. Which listen, you can love farmers or ranchers all you want, but should that be the primary goal of Bay Nature magazine, to get out yet another pro rancher article as if we're short on this?
Well, again, it's just a sentence or two they'll throw out and like, well, that's not true. I mean, how can you say that? And this is as I call it, Bay Denatured magazine, which is kind of in the Bay Area. It's a prominent, respected publication. You know, it means well, but they've been on the wrong side of the Point Reyes ranching issue. They've been on the wrong side of cattle ranching overall. When always is a choice between siding with corporations and the status quo and actually being a voice for the environment, they go for the corporations and corporate management. It's just always that. That's what Bay Nature is, probably where they get their money from. I don't know. I haven't researched it. I should.
I want to I would like to start with some quotes from, here it is.
Your buddy Kevin Lunny, the rancher?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Where did this originally get printed?
I'm not sure what you're looking at. You're talking about Bay
The
Nature?
cows. Is this another Point Reyes Light where the cattle don't want to leave? Written by Sophia Grace Carter.
Yeah, I've spoken to Sophia and I actually like her, but God, she's under the well, maybe or maybe not under the thumb of Tess Elliott, she said
she's really gone off the deep end, huh?
Yeah, she's had to. The rancher community is all upset, for the God forbid the ranchers leave Point Reyes Seashore, even with millions in their pockets stuffed with cash. And she just said, "I represent this community." She said it in one of the editorials. I represent the community. I'm not an objective reporter giving you the truth. I represent these people. So therefore, if it was Exxon drilling at Point Reyes Seashore, she'd say, well, I represent this community who's here in town. I represent the drillers, or in this case.
Well, and by saying that, she is also indicating that there's only one community that matters, and that's the ranching community, because the larger part of that population in that community does not want the ranching.
Is that true? You have more of a feel for that because you screened the Chamber Point Reyes there years ago and kind of been in the town of Little Point Reyes Station. Yeah,
Jack, people are scared. People are scared. I don't know if people are going to believe this when I say it, but when I would be in Point Reyes or in Inverness and strike up a conversation with somebody, they'd really start spilling the beans and then all of a sudden be like, I better not. I swear to God.
I believe you, Skylar. I mean, it's what you're really good at, which is telling the truth, in a simple, emphatic way. I guess it makes sense, but I mean, I don't want to get into too much personal stuff, but I was in that community for a bunch of months in the last few years, and I was aware, like, wow, if you speak out, there's the land's all around you. It may not be a large number of owners, but the amount of acreage of that place is all cattle. I mean, it's just,
okay. So people will be like, our kids go to school together. I have to run into them at the grocery stores.
Ranchers.
Yeah. Right. And of course, they're the ones who show up at the grocery store with their rifles in the back window, things like that. But there are other things that were blatantly obvious, which I imagine you remember when Miyoko was brave enough to screen the Shame of Point Reyes there, and they ripped down all the signs around town and told the dance palace that they would stop doing business with them if they screened it.
Wow.
And then the ranchers didn't bother to show up after being invited. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Meaning they would be terrified of an actual open discussion / debate.
Well, some people who would attend a film such as mine aren't going to be convinced by the exact same shit that people like Kevin Lundy spew out. We've been here forever. Tradition, culture, milk, economy. But let's get to the disconnect, because you said you like this Sophia Grace Carter person, and we've all very much liked people. And not only have we liked people, we've been those people who had that convenient disconnect. But, I have a scene in The Shame of Point Reyes from back in 2018 of them prodding the cattle onto the slaughter truck. And guess what? Guess what, everybody? They didn't want to leave then either, which brings us to the opening line of this piece of trash journalism. The cows didn't want to leave.
Cows didn't want to leave. And this is which ranch now? Be specific here, because this is that tells it all right there. It really does.
Kevin Lunny, Ranch.
Kevin Lunny is quoted as saying, when he has to, he with accepted money to leave Point Reyes National Seashore that he's been stewarding for decades. The story is the cows don't want to leave. And of course, I would say, okay, I mean, it makes perfect sense. The cows are looking frightened, nervous, skittish to get on a truck to leave the farm. I wonder why. Where are they headed? I mean, it's just, God, they're scared now because we're taking them away to a new home. Not they're scared every day of their life because when they get in a truck, they never come back because they go to their death when they're age 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
That first line gives human beings that want to imagine a fantasy world, the idea that the only time that the cows leave there is when environmentalists force them to leave,
Right. Very
instead of the feed them insane amount of resources and water that California can't spare, so that they become gigantic by age 3, and then you can slaughter them and have the next round replacing them as quickly as possible. I mean, this is around the clock. Grow them, slaughter them, grow them, slaughter them. And maybe, Kevin Lundy's beef, so you don't have the dairy aspect of it, but he can still take when he has too many baby cows. Just cattle. Cows, I guess, indicates female. That's just a bad habit.
well.
You can still you can still veal them. You can still, or you can just dump them in the calf carcass dumps that have been found in Point Reyes, because that's how much they value life. If an animal can't bring you the projected amount of money, that's what's done with them. These are the types of violations that people like Kevin Lundy have been guilty of in Point Reyes National Seashore, while paying next to nothing and then still complaining. Oh. And now apparently their cows are complaining. The poor cows. So back to the article. Poor cows. They didn't want to leave for the first time ever. Stubborn to the end. The last 5 bucked.
Well, they love the land, and we environmentalists are ruining it for them because they have to leave that land and go to a different land. It's all our fault. The poor cows who the ranchers care for and love, because they work with them every day before they slaughter them when they're children.
The last 5 bucked and writhed and bolted as Kevin Lundy, his son Patrick, and their friend Jamie Curtis coaxed, prodded, and finally muscled them into the cattle trailer. Unlike usual. I'm sure usually they're like, "Oh, please kill me."
God. I see why you're wearing your dark Skylar hat today.
For once, Kevin and Patrick's preternatural sense for handling ruminants seemed to desert them. Oh, God. Frustrated and dazed, they watched as the cows turned and charged back down the chute, forcing them to start over.
I mean, this is so perfect, Skylar. It's like,
it's astonishing.
This is getting people to feel sorry for the poor cows because of something the environmentalists, as they call the Nature Conservancy, have done.
It reminds me of the people that try to make themselves feel better about their meat choices by saying, "Oh, well, do you guys care about the feelings of the plants?"
Right.
Like, you mean the plants that are grown by ranchers, killed, and then fed to the cattle that are then killed? The bottom line is, whether you think plants have feelings or not, you guys using the plants as the argument certainly don't give a shit if plants have feelings. So don't pretend. Don't use that as an ethical argument.
And in addition, when someone says, "Hey, as a vegan, you're killing plants, aren't you?" I say, "I'm killing 1/10 the number of plants you are, because you're pumping them through a giant cow," which is, I love quoting Skylar saying, it's the most inefficient way to raise animals, raise food for human consumption you could possibly imagine. Push the vegetables through a cow and you're eating 10 times the amount of vegetables.
You probably are even less damaging, because something important to point out about what ranchers grow to feed cattle is that it's maybe 100% annuals, a grass of some form. And I know cattle like to eat flowers too, which is why there aren't any in Point Reyes other than the silage fields. And we're talking about annuals. If you, Jack, are eating fruit or nuts, you are harvesting that from like a perennial plant, which means you didn't kill the plant, which means it actually, by nature's design, produced that food with the desire for another creature to consume the fruit that it created for its own continuance. So unless you are choosing to eat a grain, the perennial plants, such as the pines that produced pine nuts, which, by the way, the protein content blows everything out of the water, including meat, including peanut butter.
Whoa, wait a sec. You're saying I can get protein from somewhere other than a steak, Skylar?
Yes,
Wow.
much more efficient protein.
I didn't know that. I mean, the last 10 years I've been running without eating any meat or dairy. I thought it was a protein deficiency that was giving me all the energy.
I don't know how long I should. Boy, I better not read too much more of this. It's the first 3 paragraphs are just insane.
Well, you folks, we were talking about this. Like, do we get through the articles, or do we? I was saying, let's just dig into the articles and just stay there and hang out, because there's so much to digest, and it's important.
Oh, but there's so much to make fun of too.
Right. Well, that's what I mean when I say digest. Of course.
Anyway, we're sympathizing with Kevin Lunny and his animal slaughtering friends. That they're sympathizing with the poor cattle that don't want to leave, and apparently for the first time ever.
And you remind me, I'm actually backing up. I am going to actually call Sophia Grace Carter, young woman who's relatively new with the Point Reyes Light, and invite her on my Saturday, June 28th Forests tour. She talked about, we had set up an appointment actually to meet in the Tamaulipas Bay State Park Forest, which is on the Point Reyes Peninsula. This is all in the same area in our backyard here, and take a tour. And then she had to cancel for something else. And I never pursued it. I figured, whatever. I don't, need to bother with the little Point Reyes Light. But I'm actually doing a tour of this with some people who are interested in the issue and want to see this beautiful forest. And then I'm going to walk them also on the same day. It's going to be like 10 miles of walking for people who can do that into the. This might interest you, Skylar, actually. This is on June 28th, two Saturdays from now, not this one coming. Actually, 3 Saturdays now. Take them up into the burn, the 2020 Woodward Valley fire, the big wildfire that was not contained, that burned a lot of acreage inside Point Reyes Central Seashore. Because people think, we need to trim and manage and heal the land with, whether it's with cattle or with chainsaws. We have to do something. Otherwise, you'll have a catastrophic fire. Well, this is that fire. It was a lightning strike. They didn't have firefighters to fight it in the woods. They let it burn. And now, 5 years later, it is a Garden of Eden. It is regenerated in just 5 years by that fire. Meaning there's lots of blackened trees, they're called snags actually after post-burn, but these blackened sticks. Most of the carbon is still there in the tree, by the way, even after a big fire. People don't know that. And then the ground is bursting with green. All sorts of understory vegetation, low plants. And then there's areas where there's, oh my God, this is a forest of baby Douglas fir trees. It's like a tree nursery, because that's what happens after a fire. Fire doesn't destroy forests. There are sections of a forest that may not regenerate like that. But anyway, I could go on. So for anyone listening, by the way, contact me Saturday, June 28th. It's going to be 10 miles of walking all day in 2 different forests with a group of fellow people interested in these issues. And I'll be talking to people and enjoying time in nature, which God knows I need these days after watching LA riots the last 2 days.
By the way, I forwarded you this article from the California Chaparral Institute, where they won against Cal Fire. And everyone who thinks that Cal Fire are the good guys, they're the timber industry. And they're part of the livestock industry, because those are the 2 industries that benefit the most from them continuing to deforest.
Cal Fire, exactly. Cal Fire is short for California Department of Forestry and Fire Prevention. So they'll send in firefighters, but it's Department of Forestry. And of course, remember, folks, in the lexicon of truth, a forester is someone who deforests forests.
Forester sounds a lot nicer, though, doesn't it?
It does sound wonderful. It's
just like you harvest cattle. You don't send them on a nightmarish trip to the slaughterhouse.
Cattlemen could call themselves cattle lovers, because they literally love them. And I mean that in the biblical sense. And then they lead them off to their early demise with love.
It's the thing with the Cal Fire is, I'm sure it's alarming for some people to hear me speak so poorly of them, but the point I want people to understand is that they lost. As big and powerful as they are, their plan was so flawed that the Chaparral Institute actually defeated them in court. Now that's got to tell you something. That's got to tell you, wow, maybe I should look into exactly what their plan is and how they could possibly be defeated.
Yeah, Rick Halsey I spoke to him yesterday. He's the guy that runs the CCI, and he's just great. We will have him on this show when we're talking to forest issues, and he's a really great voice. You'd like him, Skylar. I don't think you've met him. By the way, good morning, Skylar. Good morning, Leah. Thank you guys for joining. And good morning, Ray Cooper, who, oh, you're very sweet, who says he loves this. I'm not sure what you love, but God bless you. Just us two ranting, I suppose.
Anybody in the mood to call in today? Maybe we'll entertain a call at some point here. We're already flirting with some of the themes that are in the Bay Nature magazine. So let me read at least one more line from this piece of trash
In the Point Reyes light before we move to Bay denatured.
I'm continuing.
Yeah.
The scene played out as a kind of mourning rite, a rage of bereavement.
Come on, you got to stop laughing. I can't hear you.
In resisting the trailer, the cattle seemed to make tangible the disbelief hanging over the mourning. Eventually, they gave in.
Wow, they made tangible the disbelief. That's impressive for a cow. Wow.
Oh,
oh God. The cow made tangible the disbelief.
This is the only address I've ever had, Kevin told Ethan Inletter of the Nature Conservancy. I don't think that's true. I'm sure Kevin Lunny has multiple addresses. He has multiple businesses.
Say that again, Skylar.
Kevin Lunny is claiming this is the only address he's ever had.
Oh, no. Gosh. What about his papa? Is his papa okay? Oh, my goodness.
By the way, compared to what the rest of us are dealing with, you spoiled, entitled brat. I don't know how many people get to live exactly where they want for their entire lives, except for the privileged and the fortunate and the blessed. Now, Lunny, there's not a chance in hell this is your only address. Not a chance. You rich man. Piece of shit.
POS. FYI. RIP. And by the way, just so folks, the other tidbit is his ranch is subsidized by you, the taxpayer. The Lunnies live on that land at bargain basement prices because the taxpayers subsidize his lease. Oh, poor little, what is it, two of the world's smallest violins? Is that this one? It's just incredible. And of course, people out of context don't know this and think, hey, why are you picking on this rancher? He's a hardworking farmer. Like, no, he's not. He's subsidized by you, the taxpayer.
He comes out and visits his illegal human slaves every now and then, I imagine, when he's going and checking on his other illegal slaves at his other businesses.
Do you mean the hardworking immigrant ranch workers that they treat and love and live in, around human sewage on their land in dilapidated buildings that you documented? Is that what you mean, Skylar?
I don't know. Kevin gave a last lamentation. This whole thing is wrong, he said, in his firm yet genial way. I'm sure it was very genial. This is the wrong ending, but it's the ending. Oh my God. Can we have a moment of silence? This ends people's history, their culture. This is who we are and what we are. Wait a minute. I thought you were a grading service. I thought you were a composting service.
Well, he'll be graveling roads. Don't you worry.
And by the way, once again, I'm going to say this every episode. Why are you only lamenting the people leaving the national seashore? Because there's plenty of ranchers that are selling off and leaving without anyone telling them to. They're just making an independent decision.
You're ending his history. I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds bad that history is ending for him because he's moving off his subsidized leases where he pollutes the land.
He makes it so easy for me to make fun of the human species in general, just like our self-worth and our meaning is trivial as he's demonstrating. It's like, well, if the only thing that you can cling to that determines that you meant anything ever is continuing to refer back to what your ancestors did, then what the fuck did you ever do? Especially when your ancestors came here and destroyed everything, chopped down the trees, trapped and furred all the animals, hunted, defiled the land, replaced native habitat with annual grasses. And that's probably a pretty good place for us to move into the Bay Nature article, because at one point in
denatured.
Bay denatured, because at one point in Bay denatured, they I don't know if they understood what they're saying, but they were talking about the landscape of Mediterranean grasses. I'm like, do you understand we're not in the fucking Mediterranean?
But then they complain about invasive weeds taking over the park. Yeah,
exactly.
We'll get into this. It's great.
People need to understand those.
Corinne, good morning. Corinne, excuse me, good morning, says WTF, which means I think it's where it's saying good morning. And if it's in print, it must be true. And an honest doubter says, quote, my undocumented workers have never had an address.
Those poor things.
Thank you. So, folks, I mean, I was tempted to sort of like share the article, but I don't want people to read this without it being curated, as we will, because it's just, you don't share the first lesson of Happy Fun Ball. You don't share propaganda without telling people very carefully, repeatedly, it's propaganda, because that's what this is. And it starts out, this is Bay Nature Magazine, May 15, 2025 article written by independent journalist Lisa Krieger. And it starts with the gentle rolling hills of Point Reyes Seashore, rangeland scientists, blah, blah, blah. So this bucolic picture. And then at the end of the third paragraph, it says, quote, ranchers will no longer steward the area. Instead, environmentalists will, in collaboration with the National Park Service. Ranchers will no longer steward the area. What does that mean to you, Skylar?
The first thing that comes to my mind is challenging people to go look for themselves, because with just about any topic I've ever worked on, you can throw them the best stats ever. You can tell them the prettiest speech ever. If they don't go and witness it for themselves, there's still a barrier. And there might still even be a barrier after they go and witness it for themselves. But they are not stewarding. They are destroying. And this article is going to include the human structures in addition to the land, which, by the way, the ranchers let fall to pieces while they were there. This isn't new. It didn't just suddenly have 100 years of wood rot since the since the Nature Conservancy agreement. And the ranchers are so fucking entitled and powerful that they don't even understand the stupidity of some of the things that they said, because they are quoted as saying, well, why would we invest any upkeep in places that we lease? Because they just thought that it was their right to own something that they had already sold.
Excellent point. Let me elaborate on that. So that they say is we need 10 and 20-year leases, otherwise it's not worth investing. Well, that sounds reasonable on the face of it if you take it out of context. And the context is these families have been there for 150 years. They've never not been there. The park was created while they are still there. So for the past 150 years, this whole thing, the buildings have been decaying and dilapidated, and they're not repairing them. And they keep getting these, they know they're going to be there, and yet they still don't repair them. So it's just, as usual, complete nonsense.
Hashtag historic.
Hashtag historic. So the very next sentence is, without quick action, the beloved landscape. Beloved landscape. I want to go with that. Could become an eyesore because it's so beautiful right now. Could become an eyesore. These are pasture lands in Point Reyes. Could become an eyesore, overgrown with invasive weeds and decaying structures. Period.
Okay, so, right. Okay, so I already did the decaying structure part, but we're gonna have to come back to that sentence throughout the entire article, because it really tells you everything. The beloved landscape. This is inferring that the part that's beloved is the ranch part.
Exactly.
Right. Fuck nature. From a Bay Nature magazine, Bay Denatured magazine. Oh, the part you should beloved is not the part that God created or that nature created.
Exactly. So the focus is on the thing that's loved is the thing that man has created by destroying what was there to begin with, and is actively destroying. Whenever you're cattle ranching, you're actively destroying it, desiccating it, compacting the soil, killing the plants, or in this case, killing the plants that you planted so you'll plant them again and let them regrow, but never sequestering carbon, despite it being regenerative and rotationally grazed.
Could become an eyesore. Again, you have to go and look for yourselves. Show me the native plants out there that are an eyesore. And then I'm going to drag you by your hair to Lunny's ranch and show you the devastation that he's caused.
Well, that's what your films have done. You show it. Yeah.
I didn't show nearly as bad as I could have. I mean, what they've done there is insane. It is the worst example of land management that Laura Cunningham has seen in her entire career working for the Bureau of Land Management and other organizations. And it's the stewards of the land inside of a national seashore. Let's
Continue.
overcome with invasive weeds. I want to focus on for a moment too, because
Sure.
I had to go through the process personally. It seems very stupid and obvious now, of understanding that when it's green and rolling, that's the exact same plants that a little bit later on are yellow, dry thistles and stabby grasses that are fire fuel. It's the same stuff, also known as invasive weeds. But you're praising the invasive weeds that they brought here as a beloved landscape, while also saying, uh-oh, it could turn into invasive weeds.
Right. The contradiction built into two different sentences, a paragraph apart. Right. Well, which is it? Yeah, exactly.
Can somebody respond to that? Somebody in the chat. Somebody must have something to say to that. Do you understand the absurdity of what I just pointed out, or is it like confusing?
So honest doubters is, what type of cattle are out there? Aren't most cattle now breeds, inventions of the last 70 years? So not exactly native plants. Well, they're certainly not native plants. None of the cattle are. They're all European imports. I don't know the breeds of cattle. Jim Coda knows a fair amount. Maybe you know some, Skylar, but you know they're all genetically manipulated up the wazoo, as they say in the breeding industry, because they're literally going up the wazoo. To create these domesticated livestock animals for consumption that just stand there and eat a lot to get fat as possible, as quick as possible. So none of it's so far from natural. That's when people say, oh, you're eating some weird veggie burger with, compressed beans or quinoa. It's like, do you think a cow is natural these days? It's not a
Right.
wild bison, even when they sell wild bison. Anyway. Yeah.
Corinne, really quick. I did reach out to the author, hoping that I could conduct an interview with her personally, and gently, believe it or not, gently, just
without
like
the hat.
yeah, pose some of these questions and see what she had actually done before going ahead and writing this. In particular, when she references later on in the article how some places have already started being overtaken. I'm like, please provide the timeline of when you documented the changes.
Yeah.
And I mean, that seems like a pretty reasonable request, doesn't it? If you're going to print it.
To your profound point about having to be there, people won't get it until they be there. They can see your film, which is a great help. Any film you show them, Skylar, that you do is better than reading something. But then, as you say, you got to be there. I stood on the land. I drove in with I'll just call him James. I don't want to say his last name. Doesn't matter who he was. Writing for Sierra magazine, million reader publication of the Sierra Club. And this is a story on Point Reyes done 3 or 4 years ago. And I took him out on Pierce Point Road, just a couple miles in. So we at the overlook over M Ranch, that huge, vast landscape. You're looking at hundreds of acres below, all green grass for cattle. Look nice and green. And I said, James, do you realize what you're looking at there? Over in the distance, there's some coastal scrub. Behind there's a few trees. What we're looking at is this is all decimated land. It looks nice and green. And he's an educated guy. He got it. And none of that was reflected in the article he wrote. The takeaway of the Sierra Magazine article, looking at Point Reyes Seashore years ago, was if we remove the cows and let the elk run free without predators, we'll have an overpopulation problem of elk. He looked at the land and just nowhere and then say, yeah, this is not Jack's opinion or some environmentalist opinion. Clearly, the landscape has been completely altered by cattle. Not in the article. Sierra Club magazine. Sierra Club won't touch it. Won't touch it. Too scared.
Right. I mean, with friends like these, who needs enemies? And the wildlife news, George Worthner and that whole crew have been releasing some studies that show a magnificent recovery of natural landscapes simply by the removal of cattle, which is really, it's, yeah.
The next sentence I was going to read is to that point.
Okay, read.
Quote, but it's more complicated than that. Than it seems, and this is Nature Conservancy, TNC, the environmentalist Mark Reynolds, a grasslands expert who has guided the organization's restoration of Danger Mound Preserve in SoCal. which, like Point Reyes, was once vast ranch lands. Quote, but it's more complicated than it seems, he says. It's not as simple as remove the cattle and everything will be fine. And that's complicated and tricky. You know, we may agree to that to some extent, and you and Laura Cunningham have different opinions, but there it is right there. And this is from the Nature Conservancy's point of view, which is they're looking for justifications to graze cattle, in my opinion. That's their bias.
Right. Right. That's pretty sad. And unfortunately, you're correct. And again, it goes back to this article. It makes no sense and contradicts itself continually. Like they're talking about, it will be more dominated by the opportunity to see wildlife and restored freshwater ecosystems. Well, what was preventing that? The shit that you're removing. And then you're going to turn around and say that we need to continue with that.
Right.
What?
Removing the people who destroyed the land and saying, hey, if you remove them, who's going to steward the land? Well, no one was stewarding the land. They were destroying it. Corinne, you'll appreciate her comment. She suggests that we have sexual intercourse with the Sierra Club. and Leah suggests, Jack, maybe get the Point Reyes group. This is our group of folks we work with to advance this cause, to send mass emails to Bay Denatured, talking about the propaganda. It might be worth doing. You're right. We should, Leah, and maybe some people do. I kind of get so dejected at this, like, oh, what's the point? But
you can do that, but it's the same thing as when I got into this Point Reyes fight years ago. It was like, we are up against corruption, not against people who need to be woken up. We're already too far gone with the corruption. Like writing to Point Reyes National Seashore staff, hey, biologist experts, did you know that what you're doing is bad for nature? I mean, if you're having to have that conversation, you've got a bigger problem on your hand. I always, and yes, I'm the dick of this show, but I feel like you have to shame people into doing the right thing at this point.
And
which is in fact kind of what happened. Like your demonstrations and the public notice that our entire group brought about actually forced the Park Service's hand just out of embarrassment.
Yeah. And since if you're the dick, I guess that makes me the Jane of the show. I do agree, Leah. It would be good to do. I just look, maybe like Sky was saying, I really don't have the patience to keep writing the little letters. I mean, I'll do an opinion piece if I can get, more ink, but to write the letters, and yet it's a really valuable service. So I'm actually very grateful to the group, with hundreds of us. If people keep dribbing and drabbing letters in, it is good. Then Bay Nature kind of gets unnoticed.
And when
we better shift like Huffman and blow with the wind, which is shifting.
When you write your passionate letter that also includes facts, not just passion, and you get the pre-written robotic response in return, that doesn't feel good. You know that you just like threw it into the abyss, all your effort.
But
anyway.
I think she's right. If they got 20 or 30 letters all of a sudden about this,
yeah, my position is don't not try,
right,
but don't rely upon that method.
Manage your expectations too, I suppose.
So let's talk about Mr. Nature Conservancy's sentence. It's not as simple as remove the cattle and everything will be fine. It actually is.
Thank you.
If you have the time and the patience, because this land is really effed up from the ranchers. So you're talking about, let's say that's a person in the hospital in critical condition, but you remove what was ailing them and are like, hey, fight your way back. They'll get there. Would they get back there faster if you aided them
or gave them some soup?
Right. So this is what we're talking about, because passive restoration is real, and there are documented cases of passive restoration. Nature will fight back, but it's going to take time, and we don't have that time. We don't have that time. We need to actively help, which, by the way, Point Reyes National Seashore did in the case of the Giacomini wetlands. They were very hands-on when they removed the dairy there and got rid of the dredges and the damming and, all those wonderful things that ranchers do to nature so that their cattle can have all the water that was once supporting a myriad of wildlife. Like the Giacomini wetlands are now incredible. Literally allowed the interaction between the land water source and the ocean water source to start interacting again, which just provides multiple aquatic ecosystems. You've got the salt water, you've got the transition from saltwater to fresh, you've got fresh, and how many different species need each of those different types of environments in order to survive, and none of them could because of Giacomini and his destruction of that land
by the cattle business, with the cattle business.
Yeah, if the Park Service had, this was Neubacher, this was under Neubacher, had not come in with their trucks to remove all the damaging things that the ranchers had put there, and had not made the effort to plant some of the plants that were supposed to be there, it would have taken much, much, much longer for it to come back. So I think, I always say, if we as a species were willing to lay our hands on in a harmful manner to that extent, then it's justified for us to lay our hands on in a healing manner, instead of just saying, well, fuck it, nature, you're on your own.
I agree with everything you said, of course, Skylar. I mean, we're very much aligned. We're actually, in reality, on the ground, we'd be identically aligned in what we do. You did say that, you know, some of it's so hammered now, we need to be more active management. And I would trust you, as I've told Laura Cunningham, I would trust you guys, both of you. I know what's in your heart, and I know you're not out to make money and to harm the land anyway. You're to restore the land. But when we environmentalists say, I'm always really hyper attentive to the language. Lee and I talk about this at times, and say that we're for, you know, we need to actively manage the land. Unfortunately, then that gets contorted by the Nature Conservancy that says we're going to actively manage it with cattle, with grazing. And that goes on. That's the next sentence in this article here. Well, we need to put cattle out there to keep the grasses down. Like, no. Completely lying, wrong. So I'm always biased toward just let nature heal. I don't need to make it the way it was 100 years ago, other than, you know, tear out the pavement, get the asphalt out of there. But you're going to, you know, try to tear out every weed, every invasive grass, every European grass that's grown out there. If you look at the Point Reyes Elk Reserve, that's actually land that was just, they didn't go in there and pull out everything that the cattle brought in, right? They just let it sit for the last, I guess the elk were put in what, 47 years ago? When
78.
78. Yeah, thank you. When I graduated high school, I remember that one. So in 78, the cows were out, fence went up, elk went in, and as far as I know, there's been no more active restoration of that land. So there's a lot of plants in there that, you know, quote unquote, shouldn't be there or weren't there to begin with. But I see that as a healed land. It's now growing green, sequestering carbon 24/7, 365.
It's definitely better. But Jim Coda said something that I agree with completely.
Yeah.
The neighboring silage fields and then the proliferation of the seeds from the silage plants have absolutely affected the elk reserve. You find that stuff in there pretty badly, which, you know, this is happening under the Park Service's watch. It's like,
yeah,
you guys say that you're balancing this delicate relationship of, you've got ranching there and you're trying to have nature there. Well, at a minimum, you can't be like, hey, keep your invasive plants out of the elk reserve, or you as the Park Service go and do your part to stop those plants that, once they establish themselves and continue to spread their seeds further in. No, because they were busy building barbed wire fences for the ranchers instead of helping nature. That's what our Park Service does.
And again, the good news is this has changed now. A 46-year-old federal policy has changed, and now it's going to get a lot of the thousands of cows out, if not, and not all of them, unfortunately, but a lot of them out. Corrine says, in the case of having your letter ignored, she keeps sending it till she gets someone's attention. Well, God bless you, Corrine. We do need people with that kind of stick-to-itiveness and determination to just keep doing it. And NC says, look at Drake Sestero now that Kevin Lunny is out of there. Oh, that's right. Your hero, Kevin Lunny, had his oyster business there.
And left the taxpayers with millions of dollars of cleanup.
When he was paid to leave, right? He was paid to leave?
Well, his lease that
his lease expired. They didn't renew.
Expired.
Right?
And how dare we hold a rancher to the lease that they signed?
And he was supposed to clean it up when he left, and he didn't. It was how many millions of dollars of cleanup that the Park Service had to do, cleaning up after Kevin Lunny, the poor rancher who then kept fouling other parts of the park with cows. Just monstrous.
3 million or 8 million?
Oh God, the new Edible magazine. The magazine's name is Edible. Has a, like, it's a food magazine. I don't even know it. Has a lengthy article on regenerative ranching, including focus on strauss and other other animal exploiters. So how can we get the idea to rest that cows are good for nature? Well, the answer obviously is we keep running our mouths, all of us, and writing our letters.
Get people to watch us. I'm putting it on you.
Thank you, and get people to watch us. Yeah, Corinne. So you few fans and folks here, please keep pointing people to the show. It's always, Corinne, if you had trouble with the link, it's always on my website at 9 in the morning every Tuesday. And on Watching Humans, the YouTube channel and page of Skylar. So the show links are always there, every Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Let's think of how confusing the notion of you got to have the cattle there to manage the grasses is. When they say manage the grasses, they're talking about just giving the cattle a free meal and actually proliferating the problem. They are perpetuating the problem. Now, do the grasses get shorter? Yeah, as they're eaten. Do they come back? In fact, do they come back worse? The answer is yes. And I have dealt with this with the goat grazing fad that is just dominating California. Like private land, protected land, public land, it's all being grazed one way or another, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't know what the difference is. Protected watersheds have cattle in them. I mean, like, how are we ever going to determine whether or not land can do well without cattle when you won't fucking give any of California a break from the cattle? I mean, the Nature Conservancy gets rid of the ranchers with a plan to bring in other cattle, right? We don't know whose cattle they're going to be. I mean, it'll be a funny twist to see if the ranchers get paid to leave and get paid to bring their cattle back in, won't it?
Well, in effect, that is what's happening, Skylar.
The same, but the same ranchers?
Oh, the same ones.
Yeah, that's what would be the real twist.
If we monitor, that wouldn't happen. If we don't monitor, the Nature Conservancy will bring in other cattle owned by other ranchers. I mean, it's always cattle, cattle, cattle. It's just, it's like a cattle disease. The next line, quote, under the old ranching regime, the landscape was deeply familiar.
Oh, well, that's probably the most important thing. That's what
which is as you would say, about. Historic. The landscape was deeply familiar. That's from the old ranching regime, not destroyed, decimated, desiccated, beaten down to dirt. It was deeply familiar. It was deeply familiar that the Jews at Auschwitz were piled up in ash piles. It was familiar. And once we freed the Jews from Auschwitz, it was an unfamiliar environment. What would happen? It was such a mess. How can we clean it up now?
You got to read an Honest Doubter's quote.
My motivations are also pure, Honest Doubter says. Once cattle are gone, I intend to become a new steward of Point Reyes by building a logging and paper processing plant to supply Bay Denatured magazine with regenerative paper.
Regenerative, that's important.
Right. It'll be organic regenerative paper, sourced lovingly from trees we killed with love. Oh God. You know, our love for the cowboy and everything associated with the cowboy, you just can't go at it. So, oh God, I'm skipping down 2 paragraphs. We're still like only a page in. With its cool, clean winds, dense fog, and ever-changing skies, Point Reyes was once a place of dense, impenetrable stands of coastal scrub and forested ridges dotted with small patches of native perennials, bunch grasses, and wetland plants. As people arrived, Coast Miwok, Mexican land grantees, dairy farmers, cattle ranchers, the federal government, and the contemporary influx of recreational visitors, each group asserted a distinctive and lasting signature on the land. So that's just brilliant. It's so well constructed. And I don't even think she knows how brilliant it is because she probably believes it. But it's just people, you know, the Indians are the same, exactly the Native Americans for 1,000 years, and the dairy ranchers. It's all beautiful.
Oh, yeah. She goes on to blame the Miwok in the next line for the grasslands.
Grasslands were initially created and preserved by the Coast Miwok, who established villages on the peninsula about 10,000 years ago and ignited fires to maintain open areas for hunting elk, deer, and antelope. European explorers, recognizing the land's potential, also managed the land with burning and grazing. You see, they're exactly the same. Exactly the same. Ancient Native Americans for thousands of years did exactly the same thing as what California state parks and the National Park Service are doing with tractors, cows, bulldozers, chainsaws, masticators, building roads. It's exactly the same. We're stewarding the land. And that
Yes,
is
and just imagine the impact of a small population of people that actually
live on the land.
lived as a part of that land versus this swarm of outsiders that just came and fed upon it. You know, they remained outsiders because you didn't ever like really live with the land the way that the Miwok did. And you know, to an extent, sure, you can criticize, oh, here are human beings that are changing the land for their own purposes, which is a little bit self-centered, but I can't imagine that it's as extensive as this is creating it in your minds. And by the way, whatever grassland area that they created, it was a California grassland, not a European grassland.
Right. It was all native, if you will. It was all from the same area. They weren't.
Yes, the Coast Miwok did not show up in boats bringing their non-native commodity animals and their non-native plants, which would, in a very, very short period of time, undo thousands of years of coexistence amongst various species in California. That's what Europeans did.
Yeah, it's not what you say. It's not it's the degree is what matters. The degree of the damage done, the degree of the human impact.
Well, you know, Laura Cunningham wrote "Changing Landscapes: The History of California." Sure would be nice to have her chiming in because she could, you know, tell us the extent of this. And yeah, and I mean, you understand that the grasslands were here. They just decided they wanted a little bit more grassland. It's not like they introduced an ecosystem. In fact, Point Reyes National Seashore's website has a dedicated page talking about the tragedy of there only being 2% of California's original grasslands remaining. And they did nothing to change that.
Interesting. Yeah.
But apparently it's a bad thing. I mean, or is it? I don't know. This article has me very confused.
Well, it is a bundle of contradictions, of course. I mean, it has to be to anything that says cattle ranching is great for the land and oh, what a shame has to be filled with contradictions and misleading statements. And that's really what we just read and what we're talking about is such a tricky one, Skylar, because it's not all or nothing. It's not like saying get all the cattle out, it's fine. It's like you're just saying, well, and I literally on Saturday I did a demonstration in Fairfax to not cut down trees and manage it actively with herbicides in the forest in the Marin. In the Point Reyes Peninsula, and I got into all these conversations, and I couldn't say the number of people who they have no stake in it, but they keep reading this stuff, and they're like, but don't we need to be, you know, managing the land and tending the land, and aren't, you know, it's overgrown and it needs stewarding, and always this we humans in our at least industrialized society is teaching people we must have an active hand in everything. And I've talked with Ken Brower, you know, environmental writer, about this, and it's this European notion of it's what we've done to Europe. I went there not too long ago for the first time and, you know, out on the land. And I was just like stunned to see the extent, the damage of livestock. Of course, 1,000 years there, unlike America. But it's the forests are gone, all logged, and everything is actively grazed by, you know, more sheep and cows here than cows and sheep here. It can't recover. It's changed forever. And too many people, of course. And no wild anymore. The wild is gone. It makes me appreciate America. What is left of the wild here as we're still attacking it? God.
On the J Ranch, third-generation dairymen have shipped the last 50 Holsteins to a buyer in Texas, where they're going to live happily ever after. Of course, back to the Lonnie sad story. I'm sorry.
Wait. Did you read that? Did you?
Yeah, that's like another like 5 books down in this never-ending article.
But did you say did they say happily ever after? Did you?
No, I added that part.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to check because they could say it. Why not? I mean, who's going to?
You might as well at this point.
Oh God.
Oh, down the road on the I Ranch, silage fields and a 150-year-old hay barn sit vacant.
Aw.
You know what's really suck is if the ranchers stopped mowing down baby deer. and bird nests of endangered species in those silage fields as they do every spring. That's going to be missed. You know what? You're right. What will we do without the stewardship of the ranchers?
We should call this the sarcastic radio show hour.
It's how I survive, because this is mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, me too. I'm writing satirical songs, having Mary Poppins sing about using chainsaws to scare away the deer and shoot them.
They've got a photo of D Ranch in its dilapidated state.
Uh-huh.
How do people think it got that way? When do you think that took place?
Environmentalists did it? Or no, you know what? LA rioters, brown people came up and did that. Set the ranches on fire.
We need martial law to protect the invasive grasses.
The windswept knoll feels almost sacred. Agriculture, invasion, and development have reduced such grasslands in California by 99% over the last century, according to rangeland ecologists.
I wonder, are they pretending that they're looking at a native grassland?
Well, and this is the bit where Woody Elliott, who says some good things in this article, is walking, and he found a few spots at the Point Reyes that haven't been destroyed. But even just untangle this. It's so well crafted. I mean, as sophistry. The windswept knolls feels almost sacred. Okay, so windswept knoll sounds great. It's sacred, great. And then they put all these together. Agriculture. What is that exactly? Well, that would be plants and animals. So they're not saying cows or cattle. Agriculture's in there. Invasion. I'm not sure what they mean by that. And then development have reduced grasslands in California by 99%. So who's the culprit in that one? Is that a bad thing? I think they're saying it's a bad thing, and this is according to rangeland ecologists, which is the people who are managing lands for cattle, if I understand what most rangeland ecologists have to get jobs in. I met some sweet 21-year-old kid at Saturday at the Fairfax Festival, and he's studying rangeland ecology in school. And he's going to take the forest tour in June 28th, and I'm leading. Hear that, folks? Join up. Contact me about that in 3 Saturdays. And it's like, where's this kid going to get a job? The jobs are in the cattle industry. I guess he could be a teacher, but rangeland management, what does that mean, Skylar? I want to have a conversation with the kid, a longer one, about what that means and what his future can be.
Yeah, unfortunately, rangeland science is about optimizing the cattle industry. That's your rangeland, and that's not necessarily what rangeland means. It could mean native range, but that's just not. I mean, I know UC Davis has the rangeland department, and I know that that's an agricultural school. And I also know that George Worthner said he learned you can't talk about cattle when you're in school or you'll be ostracized. You can't say anything negative about it.
And speaking of things you can't say negative about, so someone in our group, I will not mention her name, dared criticize Dewey Livingston, who did some great stuff. And I don't have a full understanding of what he's done, but he's an historian. He's 71 here. He's quoted in here, and she kind of attacked it. And then she was attacked for attacking him. But
I'm ready to attack him.
Well, here we go.
I was really disappointed to see his name used in this way.
Historian Dewey Livingston, 71, age 71, is haunted by what's already gone and fears that the National Park Service can never replace the stewardship of the seashore's agricultural land managers. He cherishes the ease of walking through grazed fields, that means by cows, carpeted with violet Douglas irises and California buttercups. Close cropped. What the
I want to see it. I'm calling Dewey out. Take me through that.
Close cropped, the pastures often offer thrilling glimpses of badgers, burrowing owls, meadowlarks, and other grassland-loving species. So I'm not attacking the reputation of Dewey Livingston. I'm attacking this sentence, if it's quoted properly by Krieger, which he's bemoaning the fact that, oh no, these pastures are offering something really special for humans to enjoy,
right,
even though it's destroying the natural landscape to make it close cropped. I guess that means eaten down by cattle. Is that what that means? Or by lawnmowers? How do you close crop the land in a national park, which is supposed to be a wild place? I ask.
Again, the disconnect, like just someone that people call an environmentalist selfishly being like, no, keep the cows here because they reduce the native habitat to such an extent that the wildlife are exposed. And that makes it easier for me to catch glimpses of them because they don't have anywhere to fucking hide.
I mean, it's as you and I go on, it's always human centric. It's bad. It's like, hey, this benefits me. I get to see the coyote because he's got nowhere to hide. It's like a zoo. It's a zoo in the wild. Hey, I can see the coyote because he's got nowhere to hide behind the bars of his cell. Out in the open range, created by the historic.
I don't believe that he walks through fields carpeted with violet Douglas irises or buttercups. That's the first thing that the cattle eat. The cattle prefer those over the grasses that the ranchers brought there for them. That's the first thing that goes.
I mean, let's talk to Dewey Livingston. Get him on the show. That's another idea. I mean, I've never spoken to the man. I'm sure he's done some really great things.
Have him give us a tour of this place that supposedly is doing so well thanks to cattle.
If I can get him on the phone, Skylar, which is a project, and talk with him and say, would you take a walk with me and Skylar? Skylar will film it and we'll have a discussion. Would that interest you?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'd love a sponsor, someone kicking $5,000 to pay Skylar to film and edit for a month and and put it together. But in any case, that's interesting. And then for free and cheap and easy, Corinne says, can you get Micah? He's the young man the 21-year-old kid who's in range management school now. Can you get him on the show? And Andy asks, and that's a great question. I actually have reached out to Micah. I haven't heard back yet. I want to get him on the forest tour. Unfortunately, you guys are out of town for the 28th. We can do it again, Corinne and Andy. But he's a wonderful kid. I mean, he's just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and, open to the world. And I want to have some influence on him so he doesn't get, absorbed,
As usual, there's so much garbage in these articles that the hour is already up. And
Wow. Just scratch the surface. Excuse me.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I mean, guys, let us know in the chat, you should get through the article and move on to the next topic. I think it's important to go into this stuff in depth because these articles are just churned out by the industry, and we need to dig into them and expose them for what they are. It's just lies, mythologies, exaggerations, nonsense, just nonsense.
Yeah, Corinne says that's an absolute lie that the wildflowers exist there. I mean,
meaning they weren't there, or they aren't there, they shouldn't be. I don't understand.
Here's what's really heartbreaking, because as I said earlier, nature will fight back, and guess what's there as soon as it tries to fight back? The livestock.
Right.
They prevent it from coming back.
The Nature Conservancy wants to bring in cows to help restore the land. They're going to bring in more of the thing that damaged the land in the first place. And
will not happen. It will not happen. And they talk about
What do you mean it won't happen? What do you mean it won't happen?
Well, restoration of nature will not happen with cattle.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Who's in my film? Judd Howell just flat out said, you're not going to restore anything with cattle. And he comes from a dairy background.
Wow.
So when the Nature Conservancy says, hey, we have a success story, and they're talking about somewhere down near Santa Barbara, you have to ask them what they mean by a success story.
Indeed. Yeah.
And, we should really both do homework for next week's episode with photos, visuals. Like us talking is valuable, but I think I'll show visual proof that this is all untrue. But there's nothing better than going out there ourselves. In fact, Jack, why don't we organize a tour? And maybe people could pitch in, because I'm in dire straits.
Yeah. You got to eat, as they say. Yeah.
I gotta go join the oil industry, a family-owned oil industry.
Something that pays.
Or maybe I should have been an illegal immigrant that way I would have been guaranteed housing here.
Yeah, and Corinne, who met this young guy, Micah, that so impressed us, she was there in the festival when he came up to us, said, poor kid thinks he's going to be working on horseback with Kevin Costner to help cattle. He's actually going to develop methods on how to get an arm deep. Oh, God bless you. He's actually going to develop methods on how to get an arm deeper into a cow tuchus. You say a tuchus.
I mean, I talked about this before. I compared it to a child that wants to be a marine biologist, and you get thrilled by going to a SeaWorld show when you're a child. You're pure inside, but then you enter an industry that is all about exploiting the animal, and you somewhere along the way develop the idea that you're helping that animal. It's a prisoner.
I was recently brought in to take photographs of the San Francisco Zoo behind the scenes,
Oh.
and we got to speak to one zookeeper. And you just, honestly, there's a sadness in talking to the person, and kind of a despair that they keep to themselves. But then if they see you're willing to listen and you're one of them and you're not going to rat them out to the boss, there's a sadness in what they see happening to animals in zoos. Of course, the people who work with them came there, as you were saying, because they love the animals. And yeah, that's kind of one of the small, numerous tragedies that goes on.
Yeah, Chris, that's a good idea. I don't think that the signal there will allow a live show to successfully be done out there, but that would have been cool.
The one place you can try it, because I used, when I was leading the demonstrations out at Pierce Point Ranch, I don't know about the Lighthouse Road, the Drake, but if you're up on the bluff just before you go down to the Pierce Point Ranch, you're up on a bluff there, and you actually get I think there's a cell tower on Mount Barnaby there. So you actually have 2-3 bars there. I've done some video there. I don't know whether we could do a show. I have to do a test, but there are spots where you can do coverage. You just stand in one spot, and you're actually out on the land of Point Reyes, looking down on Pierce Point Ranch, and some of that landscape. But I agree, it'd be tough to do.
Because the signal is so bad, I had to have emergency plans for people to come look for me set up because of the danger of the ranchers. Like, there was honest concern of them catching me somewhere and me not leaving and me not being able to contact anyone.
Well, frankly, that would be, it's what I used to do as a photographer in the streets of Manhattan, which is we set up shop, you're there doing the show, and I'm the bodyguard. And I these days.
Oh, no. I want a better bodyguard than you.
An actual bodyguard, a professional who's like, you want a beefy bodyguard.
I want an army, because Lenny's going to get his buddy Trump to send in the National Guard.
Well, anyway, I think we should wrap it up at 10:07 here, and we can do. Are we going to do more of this next week, or we haven't decided with some photographs?
Well, at the moment, that sounds great, but by next week, God only knows what insanity there will be to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Please, as usual, make at least a few quick comments in the chat of this YouTube show to get some more, and tell friends to tune in, so we can ratchet the numbers up and start making this get monetized. That would be nice. Put more time into it. No, there's no cell tower in Point Reyes, Corinne. It's in the distance, which you can see when you're up on top of the hill there before you drop down at Pierce Point Ranch.